Hello. Thank you all for being here and watching this recording. I'm Hasmeet Kalra. I'm the Associate Director here at UCSD, and today we're going to go over the second part of our four-part series, Cap, Gown, and Career, the Career Success Series. The topic that we'll be going over today is salary negotiations and compensation. So let's get started. The agenda for today. We will be breaking this presentation out into four major parts. First, we will start with understanding what negotiation is and what are the basic principles and concepts that are involved in the process of negotiating. Then we will be going over compensation and benefits, understanding the salary package, and understanding the subject of the negotiation. Then we're going to be bringing both of these together and discuss why, when, and how to negotiate your salary. We'll also sprinkle in legal considerations for you to understand your rights and your legal protections that surround this concept of salary negotiations here in California. And we will end this with going over two comprehensive case studies. The basics of negotiating. I love starting presentations from the basics, which brings me to the definitions of the words. So if we look at negotiations, there are a lot of definitions that you will find online. One that I picked is by the authors of Getting to Say Yes. If you are really interested in understanding and picking up more negotiating skills, I'd highly recommend this book. So the authors define negotiating as a back and forth communication designed to reach an agreement when you and the other side have some interests that are shared and others that are opposed. Based on this definition, we realize that there are many situations in our day to day life where we engage in negotiations without even realizing it. For example, when we're small, we usually negotiate what time we want to go to bed, or where do we go for spring break, or what do we do for dinner. All of these involve two sides who have a common interest. Yes, we want to go eat, and shared and opposed interest, which is where do you want to go eat. Similarly, with any situation where you have two people that want to reach a common agreement, have some things in common and some things that are not, they get involved into an exchange. There's an information exchange and there's a bargaining. That is called the negotiation process, in which both parties then present their positions and seek a mutually benefiting compromise. All in all, negotiations is about finding a middle ground. The three key topics that get involved in a negotiation process. This is more from the side of what your position will be and where you can find the middle ground. Let's start with the BATNA. BATNA is an acronym for your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In short, it's your plan B. Say that the agreement does not go through. So before we jump into the negotiation process, we assume that if the negotiation goes south, we do not have a negotiated agreement. What will I do then? That plan B is your BATNA. For example, say that you want to go buy apples because you are going to make apple pie for dinner. And you know that from the same vendor, you can buy pumpkins for a much cheaper price and make, because it's pumpkin season, and make pumpkin pie. So based on the price of pumpkins, which is your lower threshold, you know that this would be your alternative, you right now know how much you're willing to pay for apples. So your pumpkin pie is your BATNA. It's your alternative to getting the apples to make apple pie. Right? The stronger your BATNA, the stronger your negotiation power. If you know you have a very strong plan B, you walk in the process with that confidence that, hey, I have a very strong fallback option. you can disclose your BATNA during the negotiation process, right? Once you have your BATNA, based on that, you will decide your reservation value. Your reservation value is the value that you believe would trigger your plan B, would trigger your BATNA. It's also your walkaway point. Take the pumpkin and apple pie example. Say, for example, you know that pumpkins are $10. You are willing to pay 11 or $10 for apples. Anything above that will trigger your BATNA and you will rather make a pumpkin pie. So based on your reservation, base your reservation value after taking into account your BATNA. With reservation values, there's no right answer. It is very subjective and it is entirely based on your opinion. You would never disclose your reservation value during the negotiation process. You do not want the other side to know what your lowest threshold limit is, because then they will push you to it. But you always want to try to find out what the RV of the other person who you're negotiating with is. Then we come to ZOPA, which is your zone of potential agreement. That is your middle ground. Between the other side's reservation value and your reservation value, you will find the zone of potential agreement. I know, a lot of concepts. Let's break it down and make it a little more visual so we understand what this looks like. So in this situation, if we bring it to salary negotiations in that context, you would be the seller because you're offering value and you want to get the highest offer for the value that you bring to the company. So this is going to be your negotiation path. So here we have your alternative, which is your BATNA. Based on this, we decide your worst price, which is your reservation value. And your desired price is on this end of it. The higher, the better. Now, coming from the employer's perspective, their desired price would be towards this side, which would be on the lower end. And then they would extend all the way to the max amount they're willing to pay, before which they would activate their BATNA, which is their alternative to the agreement. Between your reservation value, your worst price, and the employer's worst price is where we find the zone of potential agreement. So this is where the negotiated value of your salary will potentially land. Now that we have understood an overview of negotiation and the negotiation process, let's go to the other side and understand compensation and benefits, which would be the subject of your negotiation. We usually consider what we get in an employment is just salary. But what we get is not only limited to your salary, but also includes a whole lot of benefits. Together, whatever you get in lieu of your time and effort is what we call remuneration. This includes your compensation, your salary. It also includes your benefits. Now, how you decide what benefits is important to you or not, that is again very subjective. You get to prioritize what benefits would kind of help you take a lower salary and just as long as you're getting like work-life balance, as long as you're able to work hybrid. So you can play around with how you weigh your benefits. The most common benefits that we see are insurance, bonuses, work-life balance, flexibility, remote and hybrid work, opportunities for growth, retirement contribution, and location. If we break it down to monetary value, benefits typically add anywhere around 15 to 28% of a worker's salary. And it is all on the table during the negotiation process. You can negotiate all these different components. But we always got to remember that the goal of the negotiation is to reach a mutually benefiting agreement. So you don't want to push or you don't want to dig your heels in about a certain thing unless that is a deal breaker for you. If it is a negotiation, you got to give and you got to take. It's all about a compromise. Some aspects of the negotiation would benefit you, and some aspects would benefit the other side, which makes sure that everyone walks out of that negotiation process feeling good about the negotiated agreement. It is really important for us to understand the perspective of the other side. In this case, it would be the employer's perspective. It's two sides of the same coin. This is very important for us to take into account when we're negotiating our remuneration. That is our benefits and our salary, what we want to have on the table, what we're okay with, what we're flexible with. It is largely informed by understanding where the other person's also coming from. For example, employers have a budget. They cannot go beyond it. There are hidden costs involved with your hiring, which are incurred by the company, like any overtime pay, any training or investments that they have to make towards getting you on par with what the team wants. Visa requirements. These would be H-1B sponsorships and all the other requirements that come with it. Then you have relocation costs and travel expenses. This is something that the employer will be taking into account while negotiating with you about your salary. Alignment with company compensation structure. Companies want to be equitable while giving out salaries. They have structures. They would want to make sure that within the hierarchy, if it's a really hierarchical company, that you get paid at a lower level than your manager. Because if not, that would create inequity and imbalance within the company. So the employer, the person you're negotiating with, will have to keep in mind what the company's compensation culture is. You also want to be fair to the rest of the team. And they want to see room for growth and how you will contribute to solving their problems. That's the value that they want to see that you bring and where you fall on required and preferred qualifications. So all of these is something that the employer will take into perspective. There's also another part that is usually considered is company culture. This comes largely with respect to the benefits. Say, for example, you want to work solely remote, but the company has a hybrid structure because they want the whole team to come together on certain days to brainstorm or to keep that company culture alive. So that might be a non-negotiable for the employer. So it is very important for you to also understand what the company culture is like before getting into the negotiating process. What helps us here is the California law. Now, most often than not, in negotiating situations, we are always trying to assess the reservation value of the other side. With employment situations, on January 1st, 2023, the California law now requires that employers that have 15 or more employees are required to post the pay scale information with the job posting. This is for full-time positions, part-time, or remote positions. This gives you an advantage in the negotiating process because you now know where the company's potential reservation value would lie and what is the upper limit or the lower limit that is within your zone of potential agreement. Also important to consider, like we discussed, the employer's perspective. They want to be equitable. There's a compensation culture that they want to comply with, and also they'll be taking into account your room for growth, what you bring into the company, and your qualifications. So it's all to be considered together while jumping into the negotiation, but this does give you a leg up. Now, We have understood what negotiating is and what the negotiation process involves. We have understood what the compensation and salary structures look like, what the employer's considerations are, and some laws that cover it. Now, let's bring these two concepts together and get into salary negotiations. Before jumping into how, I want to go over why we need to negotiate salary. So let's start with data. So people who negotiate their first salary can earn up to 500,000 more over the course of their career than those who don't. It's the magical powers of compounding. For women, the cumulative effect of consistent negotiation is estimated at around $1 million more in lifetime earnings than peers that do not negotiate. Let's take an example. Let's look at the infographic that we have on the screen here. We have two people, Jim and Jane. An offer was made to them for a job which was $45,000. Jim accepts the job, and he also accepts that he would be receiving a 1% raise every year. Jane decides to negotiate and negotiates 5,000 additional in her salary, bringing her up to $50,000. She receives a 1% raise yearly and negotiates a 4% raise every third year. Now, as you will see in the graph, they started with just a $5,000 difference. But over the years, when they retire and if they stay in the same job, their pay gap will be around $43,616. That's a huge difference. As of January 2018, California employers can no longer ask job applicants about their prior salary. Why is this useful? Now, say for example, you are in a job and you want to switch and you did not negotiate your first job. You still want to close the gap. You can use your second opportunity as a way to close this gap because you need not disclose to employers what your previous salary was. Right? Coming into more reasons as to why you deserve to be compensated fairly. Every time you negotiate, you get more comfortable doing it. Your current salary can affect your next salary and your raises. This could be within the same company. Most employers expect that you negotiate. And in general, it is a really low risk, high reward activity. And if you don't negotiate for your worth, no one's going to. So you gotta stand up for yourself and make sure you do get what is fair to you. There are a few myths that surround salary negotiations. One of them is that you only have one opportunity to negotiate. No, you have several opportunities that come up. You can ask for a performance evaluation and a salary conversation when you get a raise, when your job description changes, when you change positions, when you get a promotion. All of these are opportunities to negotiate. Negotiation can lead to an offer being revoked. Again, a myth. They have already selected you, they have liked you, they have given a lot of time and consideration in the recruitment process and have picked you. They are coming with the understanding of a negotiation. You want to reach a negotiation, and employers are expecting it. So just because you initiate a negotiating process or a conversation, that would not lead to your offer being revoked. Negotiating doesn't apply to entry-level positions. Again, not true. Talking about salary is awkward. It might feel awkward, but it isn't. A fact. Employers expect negotiating. 84% of employers say that they're willing to negotiate, but only 39% of candidates try. So majority of employers are expecting you to negotiate. Now, gone over why, let's get into how. And let's start with preparing for a negotiation. It is really, really, really important for you to research your market, for you to decide what is going on with respect to the role that you're applying for or interviewing for. What is the market range? What is happening around you? You want that to inform what you're willing to have as your reservation value. So do your research. Negotiation typically happens after the interview. And while you are preparing for the interview, we're usually doing your market research. At the same time, you can just expand your research to also include what the company's pay or compensation culture is like. And based on that, you will get an idea. Plus, you also already know the pay range that the company is offering for the role. If you're asked about salary before receiving an offer, you need to know what your range is, and research will really help you with that. So, know the salary range for the job, check online tools. We will get to that in the next slide. Assess your skills and experience relative to the position. You are tailoring your resume for the job, review that. Review all the skills that you have that did not make its way in the resume, but you bring with you to the company that should be valued. And you want to utilize your network, reach out to people, ask them about it. Okay. Coming to a few tools that you can use while doing this research. There are a whole lot of websites online for this research. You have Glassdoor.com, Salary.com, Payscale.com. All of these, you need not go through each and every website. You just want to go through enough websites so you know what the trend is. One aspect is understanding on a broader level as to within this industry or within this market, what is the common going rate for an entry level or mid level position doing X, Y, and Z. The other part is that within this company, what is their compensation structure look like? What is their compensation culture like? So to understand that, Glassdoor is a great way to know what those salary expectations could be. Also, go through all of these different sites and kind of piece together. As you get more information, you get more informed as to what the range where you lie should be. You also want to take into account or make comparisons with keeping, like, one aspect is the job title, the other aspect is the qualification. So you also want to take into account that people who are in similar roles with similar qualifications, what are they getting paid? Another great way to do research is by asking people. Now, under the National Labor Relations Act, which was in 1935, employees have the right to discuss their salary without any retaliation from a supervisor. Why is this helpful? Is that employees will be willing to have this conversation with you. You can ask them and they can tell you these details and not to be retaliated against. So, this allows you to get information from people who are on the ground about what the compensation culture is looking like. Now, this law largely applies to private sector employees, and something that we need to keep in mind before initiating these conversations with employees of the company that we're targeting. Then, once we have understood the market, we have understood the company culture, now we go into personal research. All right, consider what your new finances will look like after your graduation. Are you aware of what your monthly spending is? If not, it's a good time to start looking back. Look at the bills that you have had and do an analysis of what is your monthly spend look like and what will change post graduation. Because a lot of costs right now that you incurred are subsidized because you're on campus, like your rent and sometimes your food. So when you leave campus and you are going into these different regions, you might have additional costs that you want to consider while doing this personal research. Items that you want to consider is that you will no longer be receiving any federal aid. You might also have student loans that you would want to factor in. You would want to pay your interest and principal. health insurance costs after you're 26, and your cost of living in the location of your new employment, because that changes as well. So based on where the company is located, you want to do some local research as well. Look at what the rental prices are around the company, around where your workplace is going to be. So you want to take into account what the cost of living is. This would include your food, your rent, all of that. Based on all these three brackets of research, market industry research, company culture research, and your personal research, you will come up with three numbers. One is going to be your dream number. This is the ideal best case scenario number that you would be stoked to accept. This is what you're aspiring for. This is your ideal number. Next will be your goal number. This is an amount you'd be happy to accept. It is good, it is fair for the work, and this is your goal. You'd be good with this. Third is your minimum number, which is your reservation value. The bare minimum number that you would require to just cover your living expenses and maybe just get a little bit more, that would be just enough. How you decide your minimum number would be informed by your partner, which is your alternative if the negotiation does not go through, and also your research. Now we go into the negotiation process. When to negotiate? Negotiations usually happen towards the end of the recruiting process. So this is after your interviews are done and you're almost there, they're extending an offer, and that's when your negotiations that would be a good window for you to initiate your negotiation process. At this stage, you know that they already like you as a candidate and they want to make you an offer. It's more work for the recruiting team at this point to convince the manager that, hey, we need to go look for another candidate, or this is your second choice, and they need to restart the process sometimes. So it's more work for the recruitment team, which they don't really want either. Ultimately, both of these things put you in a great position of leverage. All right, you never want to sign an offer before at least talking about it. There is no harm in just talking about it. The more you discuss salary, the less awkward it'll get. So just ask. We discussed this earlier as well, which is in the midst. You don't have just one opportunity to negotiate. So let's go into the different opportunities for negotiation. Negotiations can occur in multiple settings. One is when you receive a verbal job offer. Two is during your performance evaluations. And three is when your job responsibilities change. So in all of these settings, you can bring up your salary negotiation talk. It is some important reminders. Don't bring up salary in your first interview. You don't want to start out the door discussing salary. You want to know for a fact that you've been selected, that they like you. That will give you that leverage, and that's when you want to bring up your salary. When the offer is presented, if it is not clear, just ask, is this offer negotiable? And once you get the offer, before you ask whether it's negotiable, express your excitement for the opportunity. And you should be excited because you got an offer, and that is phenomenal. So celebrate it and communicate it. So the other side also knows that you're excited about this opportunity. Moving on to how to negotiate. Negotiations should always be a conversation. Avoid negotiating over email. It is easy because you're not having a conversation, you're not on your feet, you get some time to think before you respond. It's definitely easier to do it via text. But it is also easy for the other side to just say no. So you want to push yourself out of that comfort zone and initiate a conversation. This could be either via Zoom, it could be on the phone, it could be in person, but as long as you're having a live conversation, that would be best. And secondly, if you want to do it over email, there's just a lot of components and facets to your compensation that would be really hard to put in words because it's not just about your salary. It is also about your benefits, which is something you can introduce in that conversation. And invite the talk. Come ready with your three numbers, know your partner, know what's your alternative, do your market research, and then be there for the conversation. And be willing to accept or deny what they offer you. Irrespective if it comes down to it, you want to be prepared then and there of whether you will accept or deny, at least internally. Now, let's move on to a scenario. This is entirely about communication. So you receive a verbal offer, but you haven't talked about salary yet, right? So how would you want to respond to it? You're talking to the person, you would say, wow, thank you so much. I am so honored and excited about this opportunity. Remember, we're showing that we're stoked about the opportunity, we're excited. And then you transition it into, before I decide, do you have some time now, or would you have some time in the next few days to discuss some of the details? Key points that you want to remember is that you don't accept or reject a job offer on the spot. You do express excitement and gratitude. And you can ask the employer for a reasonable amount of time to consider the offer. This would be around 24 to 48 hours, is what we would consider reasonable. And you can ask that time. Then you want to check in with your support system and consider whether you want the position or not. So while you are entering the conversation ready to accept or deny, you still do have the option to ask them for a day or two to just reconsider everything. And then you can check in with the people around you, your advisors, your mentors, your support system. And then you can make a decision and communicate that to the employer. Right. Now let's go into some common do's and don'ts. We do want to do our research. Even if we see the posted range, you want to have a good idea of the market average because when you're having the conversation, you want to convince the other person that you're informed, not only based on what they communicated on the job posting, but you have your finger on the nerve when it comes to what's happening in the industry, when it comes to compensations and salary. You do want to practice role play with someone. The first time negotiation can definitely be nerve-wracking. So practice. Just have someone, it could be a friend, it could even be the cardio center. You could book an appointment with us and we could talk about it. We could do a mock negotiation for you and give you feedback. So think ahead of time about how you want to phrase your inquiries and consider scheduling a practice appointment with us. You do want to highlight your value. This is why you want to do a lot of, during the research phase, you also want to take into account as to what value you're bringing, because that will give you internal confidence to ask for the amount that you're going to be asking, to ask for that dream number. So rather than focusing on why you need or want the extra money, focus on what a good investment you would be for the organization, the value that you bring. It's more about you and your contribution. Now let's move on to a few don'ts. What you don't want to do is wait too long. You'll want to agree on a salary verbally before getting a written offer. Drawing out the process too long does not help with the negotiation. So you want to have an ideally 24 to 48-hour window. Don't overdo it. Yes, negotiation is all about a give and take. It's like you're dancing. You move around, you say something, then the other side says their points, and then you say your points, and then it's a back and forth till you reach an agreement. With salary negotiations, you don't want that to go on for a long time. So you don't want to keep countering everything. So you have few chances at this. You don't want to counter more than once or twice in the same negotiation. So it will come down. This is very situational as well. There is no right answer that, hey, do when you're done. Sometimes the conversation goes differently, but just know that you want to be reasonable and you want to reach a mutual understanding. If that is not happening, make sure that you know what your partner is because you have that alternative. So instead of just engaging in that back and forth endlessly, after a point, you gotta be like, okay, I'm going to accept this, or no, this triggers my alternative, and I'm going to go with my plan B instead. Don't focus only on the money. Like we said, you get remuneration, which is a part of it is your money, is your salary, but you also have this whole other playing field, which is your benefits. So you consider your benefits, you want to consider flexibility that you get, you want to consider how happy you are at the workplace. This is long-term thinking. You want to consider their paid time off policy. You want to consider the investments that they make on your behalf. This would be retirement or insurance. Take all of that into account when deciding what your base pay, what your remuneration should look like. Now, let's get into some case studies. The first one, the candidate is a recent graduate with a BS in public health and a minor in data science, and they're applying for an entry-level research administrative assistant position within a UC San Diego research unit. The offer that they have received, the base salary is 57,000. They have benefits, which is health, dental, vision, 403(b) with a 5% match, 15 PTO days per year. There is no sign-on bonus and no relocation assistance. The first step is to do your research. Let's start at a bigger level. So this candidate is doing their market research now. They go ahead and see what the cost of living is in San Diego. And they find out that in San Diego, the cost of living is 44% higher than the US average. Then they look at benchmark salaries for comparable roles within California, your industry research. And they see that for a research administrative assistant position within California, the range is around 60,000 to 65,000. The sources that they use to gather this data would be Glassdoor, Levels FYI, the NACE salary calculator, and local market data. You can also talk to other employees to get this information. So now we have our offer and we have done our research. Then we come up with our personal research, our three numbers. First, the dream number. This would be 68,000. This would be ideal. It exceeds the market, but reflects unique regulatory experience that this person has because they bring that extra value to the company. Their goal would be 64,000, which is fair and it is aligned with the market's upper range. Their minimum, which is their reservation value, would be 60,000, which would just cover living expenses after the cost of living adjustment. How did they decide on the 60,000 is by identifying their alternative. What was their alternative to this agree? Their plan B if this job does not happen. They would continue to apply to other research admin roles, and they have one pending interview with a similar institution offering of 62,000. So they know they have that, and that is at 62,000. So given that a bird in hand is better than two in the bush, they think that, okay, my minimum is 60. I know it is less than what the other person's offering, but because I have that on the table, I am not going below 60. That is my reservation value. Based on this, you develop your value proposition. This is your justification as to why you deserve this higher amount of compensation. They have two relevant internships. One is University Research Lab and the other is Clinical Trials. They've demonstrated their ability to streamline IRB submissions, cutting processing time by 15%. They've demonstrated that they excel in a crucial aspect of the job that they're applying for. And they are proficient with data management tools, which is a requirement that can improve the grant reporting efficiency. This is everything that they bring with them to this new position. Next, they will start the dialogue of negotiation. You open with gratitude and excitement. Thank you for the offer. I'm truly excited about joining the team and contributing to the university's research mission. Then you transition. Based on my market research and the added value I can bring, particularly in regulatory compliance and data coordination, I was hoping we could discuss the base salary. You see how they bought in their unique value proposition here? Then they make the proposal. Would it be possible to adjust the base salary to 64,000? And then they throw in the data. I believe this aligns with local market averages for research administrators with similar experience while also reflecting the cost of living difference in San Diego. The initial counteroffer that they receive from the company is to increase the base salary to 62,000, which is a 5,000 increase, and add 1,200 annual professional development stipend for the project management or compliance training. So their reservation value was 60. So this is up. So it's still within their zone of potential agreement. All right, this is 62,000. And they're getting an additional stipend of 1,200 for professional development. So at this stage is when the person has to decide whether they want to counter it, whether they want to take it, whether they want to leave it, or how this fulfills with their personal goals. So one option is they accept the 62,000 and the stipend if they think that, it is not more negotiable. They propose a modest sign-on bonus of 1,500 to bridge that gap that is towards their goal number. Or they request a mid-year salary review that is, say, in 6 months based on their performance metrics. So it is a leap of faith that the company is making because they haven't seen you work in this environment. So you communicate that I'm fine with accepting this now, but I also want to have a mid-year salary review after my performance metrics have been gathered based on my performance, which will also give you additional negotiating power because you have made your difference and you have contributed, and not just you, but everyone around you will know your unique value proposition. The second case study, we have a recent graduate with a BA in psychology and a minor in business, and they're applying for a program coordinator role at San Diego's nonprofit focused on youth mental health. Their initial offer, the base salary is 52,000. They have health, dental, and vision, a 401k match, a 401k with a 3% match, 12 days paid time off, a hybrid schedule, and no sign-on bonus. The context, this is where the market research comes in, what they know about the market, and the three layers: the industry, the market, and the cost of living. So it is San Diego. So we have discussed that the cost of living in San Diego is 44% higher than US average. Comparable roles, they found the range to be 54,000 to 60,000, and the sources they used was Glassdoor and two current employees. Now the candidate comes up with three numbers. They have their dream number, which is 60,000, their goal number, which is 57,000, and their minimum, which is their 54,000. This is based on their BATNA, their alternative. So they can continue with their part-time research assistant role, which pays them $28 an hour. And they're also interviewing for a university role, which has a range of around 55,000 to 58,000. So that role that they're interviewing for has the lowest number, 55,000. So they are assured that if they get that position, they'll at least be paid 55,000. But because they've gotten this offer, they're willing to reduce the reservation value to 54,000. Like I said earlier, the minimum or your reservation value is subjective. It doesn't necessarily have to be 1,000 lower than your BATNA. It could be where you are comfortable. So there's no right answer with that. It's subjective. Then they decide their value proposition. Right? It's 2 years mental health outreach experience that they have. They're bilingual, which will help them connect with the population. They contributed to successful 25,000 grant proposal, experience with Salesforce and outcome tracking, so they're good with tools, technical skills, and they've already shown some results by increasing campus program attendance by 30%. That's their value proposition. They know they're capable and they know they will excel at this job and the value that they will bring. So they will go into the negotiation dialogue now. They'll open with gratitude and excitement. Thank you so much for the offer. I'm excited about the opportunity to support youth mental health initiatives. And then you transition. After reviewing the offer and researching comparable roles in San Diego, I was hoping we could discuss the base salary. And then they make a proposal. Given my bilingual skills, grant writing experience, and program evaluation background, would it be possible to adjust the base salary to 57,000? This aligns with local market data and reflects the value I bring to expanding outreach and reporting efforts. Based on this, they get a counter offer of 55,000, which is their base, which is a little more than their RV, so again in the zone of potential agreement. They get 3 additional paid time off days. They're expanding. So it's not just about your remuneration, it's not just about your salary, but it's also about your benefits. So they're giving additional PTO. And 6-month performance review to revisit the salary. The possible candidate responses, they could accept the revised offer, they could request some additional funds for professional development, they could negotiate for a structured 6-month salary review, or they could ask for additional flexibility with respect to their work. Now, possible candidate responses, there are a lot of options. Again, this whole process is subjective. You got to check in with yourself and see what you want, how you prioritize certain things. What is right for me might not be right for you. So you want to consider whether you want, it could be a trade-off with like, okay, I know I'll get $5,000 less, but I'm getting to work hybrid, which is a pro for me. So it works. But for someone else, that might not be the case. So again, your response is very subjective. It's going to be a lot of you within the negotiation process. And that brings us to the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us here at the Career Center at UCSD. You can book appointments with our advisors, including me, using Handshake. You just log on to Handshake, go to the Career Center tab, go to Appointments, and you can schedule an appointment. I would be happy to answer your questions. Thank you for joining us today, and please connect with us. We have Instagram, we have our YouTube page, and we also are on Facebook. You can also be abreast with our jobs, events, and appointments using Handshake. Thank you, and hope you guys have a great day.